Elias Thorne's voice cut through the tense silence. "Tell me, Ms. Davenport, was it the color of my skin that made me unworthy of a simple glass of water?" In one sudden, fateful moment, Clara Davenport's casual decision to refuse a simple glass of water spiraled into a crisis that would shatter her self-assured facade. The calm, dignified couple before her revealed themselves not as ordinary travelers, but as the true owners of the airline. Her carefully constructed world began to crumble. The flight began with an air of routine professionalism. Passengers settled into their first-class seats, each expecting the level of service promised by Horizon Air. Clara Davenport, a seasoned flight attendant with years of experience, moved confidently along the aisle. She carried herself with an assured precision that came from knowing exactly which passengers warranted her attention and which did not. In her eyes, the neatly dressed travelers in front of her fit the standard mold of high-profile clientele, business leaders, celebrities, politicians. However, when her gaze landed on an unassuming elderly couple quietly seated in the far corner of first class, something in her instinctive judgment shifted. Elias and Eleanor Thorne exuded an understated dignity that was impossible to ignore, even if their appearance was more modest than the flamboyant displays of wealth often seen in first class. Their quiet presence and gentle mannerisms set them apart without any overt announcement of importance. It was this very difference that led Clara to decide, almost imperceptibly, that their request was less urgent. When Elias softly asked for a glass of water, a request so simple that every other passenger received prompt service, Clara's response was curt and dismissive. With barely a pause, she explained that water was not available at that moment, her tone cool and her expression betraying a trace of disdain. As the flight progressed, Clara continued her routine service with the same practiced detachment, seemingly oblivious to the tension building in the cabin. Sarah Chen, a junior flight attendant who had quietly observed the interaction, felt a nagging discomfort with the way the couple had been treated. While Clara flitted between passengers with unyielding certainty, Sarah's growing concern was punctuated by subtle glances toward Elias and Eleanor. There was an unmistakable disparity in the treatment received by those who fit Clara's preconceived notion of priority and those who did not. Minutes ticked by as the cabin buzzed with low conversations and the clink of glassware. Clara's confidence began to falter ever so slightly when a series of discreet messages emerged from the couple. Elias, without raising his voice, had initiated communication with operations, a silent alarm that rippled through the flight's hierarchy. Unbeknownst to Clara, the couple held power far beyond that of a regular traveler. They were not merely passengers, but in fact, the proprietors of the airline. Their measured patience concealed an authority that was about to shift the course of the flight and Clara's fate with a single revelation. The calculated restraint of Elias and Eleanor Thorne was not meant to cause a scene, but rather to highlight an injustice without descending into chaos. Their quiet patience masked a deeper power, one that would soon bring an unexpected reckoning. In the cockpit, Captain David Miller and his co-pilot received an unusual alert, a direct report concerning the treatment of two first-class passengers. The message carried weight, and the captain's reaction was swift. His voice, calm yet resolute, echoed through the comms as he relayed a firm directive to the cabin crew. "We have priority passengers on board," he stated, his words layered with an unspoken warning. "Ensure they receive the service they're entitled to immediately." Clara Davenport, oblivious to the chain of events unfolding beyond her control, carried on with her routine until the sharp ring of the in-flight phone shattered her illusion of authority. Captain Miller's voice on the other end was composed yet unmistakably firm. "You will personally ensure the comfort of Mr. and Mrs. Thorne," he instructed. "No further delays. Do I make myself clear?" The weight of his words sent a chill through Clara. A misstep here would not just cost her the flight, it could cost her everything. Passengers, once absorbed in their own affairs, began to notice the subtle shift in atmosphere. Whispers rippled through the cabin as Clara, her usual confidence faltering, approached the elderly couple once more. This time, she carried a glass of water, her voice once laced with quiet authority now carrying a forced politeness. "Mr. Thorne, Mrs. Thorne, here is your water. My apologies for the delay." Elias accepted the glass without immediate response, his gaze steady. But his next words, though spoken gently, held the weight of something far heavier. Why did every other first-class passenger receive immediate service while we were ignored? The question, simple yet damning, cut through the air like a blade. It was not a demand for an apology, it was a demand for truth. Clara hesitated, her mind raced for an acceptable answer, but none existed. There had been no logical reason, only a momentary judgment, a subconscious bias that had guided her actions without her even realizing it. And now, the consequences of that judgment were laid bare for all to see. Sarah Chen, standing nearby, exchanged a glance with Clara, a look that carried both disappointment and understanding. It was a silent acknowledgement of the failure that had occurred. This was no mere oversight, this was a failure of perception, of fairness, of the very principles that first-class service was built upon. As the murmurs in the cabin grew, Clara felt the walls closing in. Every glance, every hushed conversation felt like a verdict being passed. The moment had spiraled beyond a mere lapse in service, this was a reckoning. And then, the final blow landed. The in-flight phone rang once more, but this time the name on the caller ID sent a jolt of fear through Clara. Richard Thorne, founder of Horizon Air. Elias's father. The man who, in a single call, could decide the fate of her entire career. The treatment Elias and Eleanor Thorne had received was no longer just about a service lapse, it had become a defining statement about the values upon which the airline was built: integrity, fairness, and respect for every individual, regardless of appearance or preconceived notions. The voice on the other end of the line, Richard Thorne, the founder of Horizon Air and father of Elias, was measured yet unwavering. His inquiry was not just about one moment of negligence, it was a direct challenge to Clara Davenport's entire approach to service. "Tell me, Ms. Davenport," Richard's voice was calm but firm, "was this an isolated oversight, or do you routinely decide who is worth your attention?" Clara felt the air grow heavy. The weight of her choices, so easily made in the moment, now bore down on her under the scrutiny of the very man who embodied the airline's highest standards. The precision of his questions left no room for evasion. Every justification she grasped for crumbled before she could even speak it. Richard's directive was clear: Clara would face immediate termination upon landing unless she demonstrated genuine accountability and a commitment to change, not through empty apologies, but through action. The cabin, which had been filled with murmurs of quiet conversations, fell into a hushed tension. Passengers who had once been passive onlookers were now active witnesses to a profound reckoning. Clara was quietly escorted to a private area in first class, a move that both the severity of the situation and the potential irreversibility of her fate. Alone with her thoughts, she sat in silence, feeling the turbulence of her own conscience more than that of the plane. The quiet yet resolute presence of Elias and Eleanor haunted her, not with anger, but with the undeniable weight of fairness. They had not raised their voices, had not demanded an immediate spectacle of punishment. Instead, they had held up a mirror, forcing her to confront the realities she had long ignored. Had she truly allowed her judgment to be dictated by surface impressions? Had efficiency and control become more important than the very essence of service, human connection? The aircraft began its descent, and the moment of reckoning approached. Near the galley, in a final confrontation charged with raw emotion, Elias and Eleanor stood before her once more. Their words were calm, yet they carried the weight of an unspoken ultimatum. "You have a choice," Elias stated plainly. "You can walk away unchanged, or you can prove that you've learned something." His words cut through the last remnants of Clara's pride. This was not just about a single flight, it was about who she chose to be. True redemption required more than an apology, it demanded an honest look at her own biases and a conscious effort to be better. And for the first time, she understood, her job was never just about service, it was about dignity. The true cost of judgment. A Horizon Air story.